Most owners are accidentally training their dog every single day. The only problem is they don't realize what they're training them to do, because your dog isn't teaching themselves these behaviors. They're learning from. Can dogs be manipulative? This is one of the most common questions that dog owners everywhere have, and the answer is kind of. But probably not in the way that you would think. Because your dog isn't sitting there plotting against you. Your dog is not some tiny furry mastermind that's trying to take over the household. But they absolutely learn what works. And once they learn what works, they are going to keep doing it. As always, like the video, share it with somebody that you know, and subscribe to the channel. I post 2 times per week on all things dog training and dog behavior, and I want you to be here. Now I work with dogs of all different shapes and sizes at my facility, from small little Frenchies to giant Great Danes and everything in between, from the sweet dogs learning obedience to dogs that are going through serious behavioral issues. And you know what one thing they all have in common? They all repeat behaviors that work, because that's how learning happens. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what people mean when they are saying that their dog's being manipulative and what actually is happening. Before we get into it though, has your dog ever done something and you looked at them like you definitely knew what you were doing there? Let me know in the comments. I know I can think of a couple off the top of my head. All right, let's get this out of the way first. Your dog is not plotting against you. Your dog isn't sitting in the living room thinking, how can I manipulate my owner today? They're not creating these elaborate plans. They're not trying to deceive you. They're not running some psychological warfare. That's not what's happening here. But they are constantly learning, and I think that is what confuses a lot of dog owners. To get a better understanding of this, you have to realize that dogs do learn what works and what doesn't. This is a key. Every behavior has a consequence. And consequence has a negative connotation, but it doesn't necessarily mean something bad. When you hear consequence, think outcome. Every behavior has an outcome. And dogs are unbelievably good at figuring out what behaviors lead to results. Here are some classic examples. Your dog whines, so you give them attention. Your dog barks, so you throw the ball. Your dog paws at you, so you pet them. Your dog refuses to come inside when you call them, so you break out the high-value reward so that they come in. So what did your dog learn in all of those scenarios? Not necessarily that they can manipulate you, but they know which behaviors get them what they want. And behaviors that work get repeated. Now let's talk about something that I tell every single client of mine. If you've been a client of mine, you know exactly what I'm about to say, and that's dogs cannot be wrong. And I know that sounds strange at first, but think about it for a second. Animals don't view behaviors through a moral lens like we do as humans. Your dog isn't out there thinking, this is bad, I probably shouldn't be doing this, this is wrong. That right there is a human concept, and one that keeps owners stuck when confused when it comes to their dog's behavior. Dogs view behavior in much simpler terms. They literally think, did this behavior work? Did this behavior get me what I wanted? If the answer to that question is yes, they're probably going to do it again. If the answer is no, then the behavior will disappear over time. I know it sounds simple, but it really is that simple. And here is where dog owners will always get themselves into trouble. Sometimes the behavior works, and sometimes it doesn't. The dog whines in its crate. Sometimes you let them out, sometimes you don't. The dog jumps onto people. Sometimes it gets affection and love, sometimes it gets ignored. The dog barks, and sometimes it gets attention, and sometimes it doesn't. Now, in those examples, the behavior is still getting stronger because dogs are opportunists. If there is even a tiny fraction of a chance that that behavior is going to get them what they want, most dogs are willing to take that chance. Because every now and then, even if it's not every single time, every now and then, that behavior pays off. And that inconsistency is what creates so many behavioral problems. Be honest, what is one thing that your dog can do that will definitely get a reaction out of you? Let me know in the comments. Now, it's really important to discuss this part right here. We as humans, we think differently than dogs do. Humans will actively know that a behavior is bad for them and do it anyways. We know smoking is unhealthy. We know excessive drinking is unhealthy. We know that drugs are no good for us. We know that excessive eating and overeating is not good for our health. And yet so many people do these same things. A dog would never. Dogs generally don't think that way. Dogs are not out here sitting about long-term consequences for their behavior. They're thinking about the here and now. Dogs live in the moment. Did this behavior get me what I wanted? Yes, I'll probably do it again. No, I'm more likely to stop. That reason right there is why dog training should be so simple in theory. The challenge isn't that dogs are overly complicated, it's that humans really struggle with being consistent. Now, what's funny about all this too is that the smarter the dog is, the faster they figure out this pattern. Think your Border Collies, think your Belgian Malinois, think your Australian Shepherds. These dogs figure out things really fast and they start connecting dots. They realize really quickly, when I do this, my owner does that. And once that pattern is established, they will repeat it over and over and over. Not because they're evil, not because they're bad dogs, or not because they're trying to dominate you, but because it works. Another thing I say often is that you said you wanted a smart dog until you realize what it actually means to have a really smart dog. Having a really highly intelligent dog requires you to be even more consistent than you should be as a normal dog owner. A couple behavioral examples of this here would be separation anxiety and resource guarding. Think about separation anxiety. The dog whines in the crate. Owner comes over and lets them out. The dog whines when it's in another room. The owner goes and picks them up. The dog barks for attention, so the owner looks at them, talks to them, goes and picks them up, gives them something to do. In this example, the dog learns that barking, whining, and crying gets the attention from the owner. So let's talk about resource guarding. The dog has something of value, say a bone or a toy. The human comes over, the dog growls, the owner backs away. Or maybe the dog is eating its food. The owner walks towards them and the dog stiffens up their body language. So the owner goes and creates space. Or of course, if the owner goes to grab something the dog has, the dog bites them and then the owner backs off because they're not trying to get bit again. In that scenario, the dog learns aggression works, guarding works, and I can control this situation with my behavior. So are these examples of a dog being manipulative? Not really. The dog simply learned the fastest way to get what they wanted, and dogs would be fools not to do what works. So let's talk about the real problem here, and it's a pretty uncomfortable truth for many dog owners. Dogs are not being manipulative. Most owners are accidentally training their dog every single day. The only problem is they don't realize what they're training them to do. Because your dog isn't teaching themselves these behaviors. They're learning from the consequences that you provide. To put it simply, if a behavior works, it's going to grow and you're going to see it again in the future. But on the other hand, if a behavior doesn't work, it is going to fade and you will stop seeing it in the future. So the question really shouldn't be, is my dog being manipulative? The better question to ask yourself is, what behaviors am I accidentally reinforcing? Because that's where usually the answer to your problem lies. So in the end, dogs are not manipulative. They're not out here plotting against you. They're not scheming. They're not trying to deceive you. But they are incredibly good at figuring out what works for them. And once they figure out what behaviors get them what they want, they're just going to keep repeating those behaviors. That's not manipulation. That's just learning. And once you can understand that, you can stop being so frustrated with your dog. And you can start paying attention to the behaviors you might accidentally be reinforcing. Because again, dogs are not asking, is this right? Should I be doing this? Is this wrong? They're simply asking themselves, did this work? Yes? Okay, I'm gonna do it again. No? Okay, I won't do it anymore. Did you learn anything in this video? If you did, please leave a comment. I respond to everything. I love the discussion. If you haven't checked out any of my videos before, I encourage you to go check them out. I post a lot on dog behavior in general, specifically reactivity and separation anxiety. I'm the Big Dog Guy, and I'll see you in the next one.